replied, "My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." It's been waged in the heavenlies for your soul and mine since the very beginning of time. This wasn't something he thought of overnight. No, we can have the paths he's called us to walk, to live the journey he has called us to live, to rise up to the standards he has called us to rise up to. Not because we're great, but because the great one lives on the inside of us. Theological questions I need responses for, all the things I'm going to want to ask him. Why'd you do this? Why were you thinking this? What was this about? I couldn't quite figure out verse 2 of chapter 2. I just don't think any of that's going to matter. I think when we see him, I think the best we're going to be able to come up with is we can now go back with our heads held high, not frustrated and discouraged, but sitting on the edge of our seat, excited because now we know that running out is a prefix to running into Jesus. You will be ruined for church as usual, my friend. I can tell you that right now. He specifically calls you and me to be in scenarios where what he is asking us to do, he knows that our resource will only get us this far. All the money we have, all the time we have, all the energy we have, the talent we have, the skill we have, all of that will only get us this far. He does it on purpose because he knows if we can get there with our own resources, we will never leave room in our lives to get a clear view of him. So what he does is set us down in scenarios where he knows no matter how hard we try, we are not going to be able to get to that destination. And he knows when that happens, when we have come to the end of ourselves, we have just created what I like to call God margin. Somebody say God margin. God margin is the gap that exists between your resources and what God has called you to do. It's the space in which he himself plants his feet and shows up in your life and says, "Hey, let me show you what it looks like to actually live by the rhythms of grace. Let me show you what it looks like when my spirit empowers you to be who it is that I've called you to be." It's like when I come to town and tell that thing to come out of the tomb and you want something you thought was dead come back to life. And I want to know God like that. John says, here's how you get to know him like that. You allow yourself to be in scenarios where your best is not good. And when you do that, he shows up. Here's three quick things. Will give all of us inspiration as to how we handle these times when we are in scenarios when our best is not good enough. The first one is found in verse 3. It says, when the wine gave out, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." Now what's interesting about this is Mary, Jesus' mother, was there, but this was not her party. The host family, this was not her wedding, but her children's wedding. It wasn't, someone in her family, as far as we know. What we do know is that, what we believe, the scholars say, is that the host of the party had probably asked Mary to assist them. They are all behind the closed walls of the kitchen. They are preparing the meals, preparing the wine to serve to the masses who are gathered. And listen, there were masses that were gathered. This wasn't a couple people that came to weddings back then. This was everybody in your neighborhood. All your cousins and their cousins. Your great-grand uncle that you have not seen since the beginning of time. This was all the folks that you knew or kind of knew. They were all at this wedding. They were not there for one night. They were there for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days. That's how long the wedding lasted. Could you even imagine? 7 days of your in-laws. I mean, my in-laws are great. That's all I'm saying. It would have been humiliating. Listen, back in biblical days, if you ran out of wine, it was an affront to the character of the host family. What it said to the people there was that they did not have the resources to take care of this new bride that was coming into their fold. It was an affront to their character. It would have been humiliating. It would have been embarrassing. Worse yet, back then, if you ran out of wine at a gathering like this, do you know that someone could actually take you to court and sue you for running out of wine? Christine said that's a good rule. So it's easier for the host family to stay behind the closed chooses to come out from behind that veneer, to come forward face to face with Jesus and say, we need your help. We got a problem in here. We've run out of something. We need you to replenish it. Thank God there was one person willing to come out from behind the veneer of perfectionism, to come forward and to admit the need. Do you know what Mary teaches us? Mary teaches us to own it. Would you look at the woman next to you and say, girl, just own it. Just own it. But we also ought to do it. Of what it is that we don't even think is worth sharing. We have enough of ourselves. It is in the midst of sharing that we get to see God do a miracle in between the verse 8 and the verse 9 of our lives. We won't see it before we walk by faith. We see it as we walk by faith. And as we move forward, we get to present to someone else something that we cannot even explain how it got there. And when they taste it, they say, this is the best I've ever seen. I have never seen anything like this in my life. And they will have no explanation of where it came from. But it says in verse 9, the servants knew. God is asking them to share, to give to what God is convicting and commissioning and challenging you to give. Even when you feel like the little bit you do have isn't even worth giving away. As the bidding of God, if he says give it, that little bit of time, that little bit of patience, that little bit of energy, that little bit of passion, that little idea that you're wondering if people are going to laugh at, but God's saying give it. That little 5 loaves and 2 fish, and you're like, God, that is not going to feed this crowd. He said, just do it. It is in the breaking of the bread that he blesses it and multiplies it and then passes it out across a plethora of opportunities that you did not even know was possible. So you know what? I want to pray for you. I want to pray for me. What I want to pray is that for anybody that is in this room and you are right smack dab in a scenario where you are giving your best and you do feel discouraged because it seems like your best is not good enough. And you know you need to see the banner, the signature of Christ over the top of your story, just like we've seen over the top of this story. You need to see and be reminded that his crucifixion covers you. You don't have to be perfect anymore. You need to be reminded that the power of the resurrection, that's available to you every day so that you can walk by the power of the Spirit. And you need to be reminded that one day he's coming. He's coming. He's going to deliver me from this. Until then, he's going to empower me. But one day, he's going to deliver me from it. I'm going to keep my eyes on him in the meanwhile. And you just need to be reminded that Jesus, he's at your party too. That you are not alone there with your hands empty of whatever it is you've been given away. Your hands are empty. You have nothing. You've been closed off behind that wall, wondering if it's worth the risk of coming out and admitting your need. And you hear Jesus today say, if you just come out, I'll take care of it. I'm going to give you an opportunity to just own it tonight. To own it. So, in this little quiet moment before God, if you feel most comfortable just raising your hand to own it, you do that. If you feel more comfortable standing to your feet to own it, you just ask the Holy Spirit what response he's asking of you. If you need to get right out there in the aisleway and just get on your knees for a second and own it, whatever it is God is asking you to do, to own your need for him. I think what he's saying over this gathering tonight is that if you will own it tonight at the Color Conference 2014, if you will own it right here in London tonight, he's just got a miracle hinging on you saying yes tonight. He's already had it prepared, just waiting for you to come out and say, I'm the one in need.